Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It's an opportunity for us to have a spiritual conversation relating to either spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And this is year 7 of Wednesdays with Willa. So you got lots of podcast shows that you can binge watch to your heart's content on my YouTube channel or my Facebook page. Fabulous guests that I've had over the years. You can even type your favorite guest's name in or a subject, and that'll pop up for you. So I encourage you to educate yourself and be part of a beautiful spiritual conversation. And we have the Lilydale summer season upon us, a 2024 season. And I'm thrilled to have as a guest today, Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hi, Willa. Thank you for having me today.
We're glad that you could be here with us today and that you're coming this summer. It's even better that you're going to be here at the end of August. You're going to
Super
be here.
excited.
Yeah.
Super excited. Yes.
And for people who are interested in getting tickets to Rich's events, I'll say it now and I'll say it later. You can go to the lilydaleassembly.org website. That's where you can register for all of the workshops that are happening this summer. We've got wonderful workshop presenters like Rich, and he'll be here August 30th, August 31st, and September 1st, which is the last day of the summer season. So a great way to conclude our summer season this year. And I know you're going to have an evening event. You're going to have natural laws of unconditional love and spiritually shifting yourself. So people are going to have lots of opportunities to learn and grow with you. And for those of you who who don't know who Rich is, he's going to share with us some wonderful insight about his particular journey. And the title of our topic today is Uncovering the World of Spirit, especially using uncovering because Rich
Oh,
is a former undercover detective. And in your years of service on the force, as it were, you did a lot in terms of the narcotics division. And I'm assuming that you're going to go into some detail about the undercover work you did in that area. And then also you had your own martial arts space. So
I
you
did.
kind of came from
I like
that
how you
part.
use the hands.
Yeah, you got to use the hands. Both my children are in karate, so sometimes they do their kata for
Oh, I
me
love it. I
at
love
home.
it.
And Rich, you've been in this journey as a spiritual medium for 15 years now, even
Yeah.
after all those other experiences. And I can't wait to have you share with our guests today about your life and what led you to this point.
It's a, it's, it, you know, it wasn't a challenge at the time, but at the same time, it is. A lot of times you don't realize how challenging it is when you're going through it all. But yeah, starting off in the police field, even how I got into that, Willa, it wasn't one of those things where I chose it right off the get-go. It was one of those things where sometimes we get our answers from eliminating what's not right for us. And it's
Yes.
one of the best ways that I learned about, even when it came into mediumship, a lot of times in order to get the right answer, I would eliminate what didn't resonate with me or what I didn't see as true.
Mhm.
And what was left was what was true. And that's how I got into law enforcement. It was, I didn't want to sit behind a chair or behind a desk. I didn't want to do computer work. And I eliminated all the things I didn't want to do. And then I was left with like two or three things, and law enforcement just fit perfectly. And everything just unfolded in the most magnificent way.
That's
I only spent a
beautiful.
short time on the street, like, in patrol. And I pretty quickly I was made detective. Just because of the assertive work that I was doing and like the high arrest rates and the convictions and all that. So they kind of look at all that. And
Mhm.
so then they transferred me into the detective bureau. And I guess because I had this youngest look to me, that I got transferred into the narcotic bureau, and I did like 3 years with the prosecutor's office, learning a lot of undercover work. So being on the streets in like Trenton was where my education came from and learning undercover work. And yeah, there were some crazy times. There were some crazy times.
So you had to go and like look the part and
Oh my
look it
God.
tough.
And try to talk that way because I don't talk street. I came from like a background where, my whole life was involved in martial arts and playing sports. So I didn't learn that street talk. I had to learn that street talk. I had to learn a cockiness to me and, kind of an underhanded way and stuff, the way that you talk. And yeah, that was a challenge for me too.
You had to become a method actor.
Yeah, I guess so, huh? In such a way, yeah. I was pretending this part and I had to, and your life is, in danger if you don't live up to the role that you're playing. And they're always challenging you on the street, from patting you down and asking questions and calling you a cop and you're wearing a wire and, people pointing knives at you or sometimes even guns. And you have to overcome the situation where, you can't panic under it. You can't fold.
Yeah, you lived a cop show.
I did live a cop show. Many,
And,
many ways. Oh yeah.
and then I'm just envisioning as you're talking about this. I mean, people are shoving you around, and you almost have to not react, and then know when to react to
Yes.
act like not scared.
Yes.
Oh, like ooh.
There was this one time, Willa. I mean, just one time where, I'm buying drugs on the street, but like you have to try different ways to get like to penetrate into like an organization or a certain part. So I ended up renting an apartment building in a really bad area, a lot of drug. And so I moved this old furniture that I found on the street into this apartment. And I bought with me this girl who was a known heroin addict in the area. And we moved into this apartment and I would entertain parties and, gain people's confidence. And so many things went wrong during those parties. And yeah, it was like you said, if you panic, then you could be placing yourself in a lot of harm.
Yeah. So, and then you also, I would imagine you have to remember what lies you've told.
Oh, and you don't want to say, hey, I was really good at lying, but that's the truth. Let's just say it was a role that I was playing. I was good. I got good at playing the role. Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel like it's so much easier not to lie. It's just like
Oh
there's no
yeah.
point in it. Just be honest. But in all of this, did anyone ever suspect you?
Oh, all the time. Yeah,
I mean, like
they
for
always challenge
real.
you. Yeah, they always challenge you like because you try to wear wires to
Yeah.
capture evidence because it's not just my word. You want to hear the other person talk when it comes to court. And so a lot of times they'll start to pat you down. And if I'm wearing a wire, I have to come up with some reason not to get them to pat me down or to search me. And so I came up with these inventive reasons and they all seem to work. So luckily for me, everything went well.
Wow. And we won't tell people the reasons in case they might use them.
Right,
This is not a dog ate my homework thing. But it's
right.
they suspect you, but I mean, did you ever get the sense that they knew there was a wire on you that you
No,
actually would need to run from a situation? You were always just so good at practically using the force on them so that they wouldn't continue with it.
yeah, a lot has to do with um confidence beforehand. So like in that
Mm,
particular situation I was telling you about,
yeah.
watching me move in from a street, pulling up in an old pickup truck and pulling out furniture, and going into the apartment, all the people that were selling drugs in the area, they were like, oh, this is another,
Just a
this is just a
regular.
low life moving in,
Mm,
into this area and stuff. So that's important that you kind of you give them a mindset before
mm,
you go in there.
right.
And so that's what I always try to do. I always try to give them a mindset that on their own, they already determined I wasn't a cop. But
Mhm.
there's always moments where you're being introduced to new people and they're calling you a cop or checking you for trying to check for your wire and yeah, you just got to come up with new
What was
ways.
the longest period of time that you had to maintain character?
Probably probably that one. I was still living at my home at the time, but I was spending most of my time there for like 3 weeks. So
Mm,
3 weeks I would sleep overnight there, and like I said, have parties, and things got out of hand. There was times where people came in with guns, and guys were beating up their girlfriends and threatening
mm,
to kill them. And you got to do something about it. And yeah, it was
yeah.
all kinds of drug use going on. Yeah.
And so how many years were you undercover
Um,
for that you did undercover work?
most of it, like I did criminal investigations too, homicides,
Mhm.
things on that level. Um, but I still like did a lot of undercover work while I was doing that. So 25 years,
Wow. Then you had to
20,
kind of
24
weave in and
years.
out of your real life and then your
Yeah.
fake life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Wow.
challenge. It's definitely a challenge. A lot of moments where you just shake your head and go like, I don't know how that one worked out, but yeah, they all seem to work out.
But that kind of fine tunes your intuition because you have to. It's life or death,
That's key.
and it's somebody else's life or death. And
Yes.
so a lot of those kinds of situations. And did you at that point in your journey start to become aware that you were using your intuition in that heightened way?
No, it
Did you
wasn't
gave
until
over to it at all? Like that you said, hey, I might have something here. I'm psychic.
I, I always got to speak the truth, but like, no, not at the time, but I demonstrated a communication that later on I knew was my spirit. So a lot of times you'll act on what cops call hunches, or you'll say, I had a gut feeling.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many times that comes true. Like the accuracy when a cop says, I just followed my gut and look at this happened. Or I followed this hunch, or I had this inkling, or I got drawn to doing this. And it's outside of your normal procedures. It's outside of the facts of the evidence, and you go in a different direction. And every single time it worked out. Every single time. It was amazing. There was one time where I was in doing criminal investigations and not in an undercover role. And there was a person who went into a backyard where they were having a sweet 16 party, and there was like 12 people there, or like 14 people there. And he held everybody up on gunpoint with the parents inside of the house. And then there was the sexual assault that occurred while the parents were in the house and everybody was under gunpoint. And this guy gets away. And so the whole neighborhood is destroyed. The girl, she just went home and wouldn't come out of her house, wouldn't go to school. Everybody's devastated. And there was no evidence, like strong evidence against anyone. And I had a list after about a month and a half of like 8 or 9 people that I suspected, but I had no evidence. But one person, for whatever reason, I got drawn to and I got connected to. And I was like, I don't know why this is the person. And so I focused all my attention on this one person and did all kinds of surveillance on him. And sure enough, I finally found enough evidence. He was the one, and he went and did like 20 some years in jail.
Oh my goodness.
Just
And
that gut feeling, that natural, I got drawn out of like 8 or 9 people I was looking at. And there was other people that when you would look at them, you would think of them a stronger candidate.
right.
And this kid was younger. He was only like 17 at the time. He didn't fit the total description I was given, but he ended up doing it. Yeah.
So it's going against common sense to some
Yes.
extent
Correct.
and following through with that, I would say, divine hunch
Yes.
that you'd received. And it can be your rational mind says, well, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? How do you know that's the right thing? It'll try to talk you out of what you deeply know.
Yes.
And the biggest thing I've learned over the years is we have to disregard that voice.
Yes.
It's what keeps us safe. It's great. We still need it. Yay, survival. But it also can hinder so much in us listening to our souls and acting from that space. So
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah. And just like you said, something else that goes along right with you said is one of the greatest tactics our thinking uses is fear. It tries to talk us out of what we spiritually know is true. It's like this resistance. And so I would use that to my advantage. If I sensed something was true, if I got drawn to it, I said to myself, these aren't reasons. These aren't mental reasons on why to choose it. I'm being drawn like spiritually. And that helped me later on, Willa, to understand that there's that two communications inside of us. Like we get drawn to something that we know is true, but at the very same time, there's no mental reasons to support it because there's not supposed to be. It's the truth. And then you have your brain that creates a fear and comes up with a voice of fear to try to talk you out of the first one. And my job was to show faith in the first one.
Beautiful. Yes. And that is how it's done, folks. Having faith. And there's an immense amount of trust that's necessary to be in that foundation of trust. Then you're able to act accordingly. And you can feel the divine hand working with you through
Yes.
those moments. And really, you having to be a hero for other people as you're going through those moments. So, saving someone else from their pain as
Yes.
best you can,
Yeah.
as best you can. And so in this process of learning intuition, but not knowing like how to give over to it, I know you had the martial arts background, and what's always fascinating me about that when you watch martial arts movies is you the people who are really super good at it, the masters, it's like they anticipate how the other people they're going to come at them. They like it's like everything slow mo's for them and they know exactly how to anticipate the moves. Do you feel that that also helped you in your detective work to have that level of heightened intuition in that way too? Like you just, hey, so is coming at me from here, boom, this is how I handle
Yeah.
them.
The martial arts I grew up with was exactly what you said. It was a martial arts where we didn't learn katas. They didn't teach you to think. They didn't teach you to memorize anything. And there was these moments as I got higher and higher in rank, well, what you're saying, where I knew someone was about to kick me with their left foot or their right foot, or to twirl around with, some kind of backwards fist. And it amazed me that I actually knew it. And it wasn't like, I hope it's true. It was, no, this is what they're going to do. And then I watched it again in the police work. I watched it happen where, again, we call it a gut feeling or a hunch or an inkling, or I get drawn to something. And it wasn't a communication saying this is what might be true. They're saying this is what's true. And I think a big part of the martial arts moments and police moments for me was this trying to give up control over my life to just follow this. Giving up soul control and soul ownership over our life to this help where we're being inspired with knowing what's going to come next and what's going to happen. That's not something I was taught when I was a kid. So that was hard for me. That was a shift that I had to make within myself to give up trying to control and own my life on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an excellent point because so often when we're trying to control our lives, we're wondering why it's not working. We're hitting our heads up against the wall. We're like, come on now, come on now. But then once you give it over to God, there's this feeling of all of a sudden things get cleaned up within like 2 weeks. And you're
Yes.
you're almost like a little mad about it because even though you're glad that it's good, you're almost like, why couldn't I do that? And it's because you needed to be on the flow of God's will with those
Yes.
events,
Yes.
with, and being able to be in that fluidity of the dance of
Yes.
life. And that even if you're given the anticipatory cues that aren't necessarily body language, but energy language, as it enters your aura field, your energy field, you're being given those hunches, those glimmers, those insights, so that you can meet the moment with your highest self.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
beautiful.
when we do mediumship, and I'm gonna say this is true for you, but I know when I first started getting into mediumship, It wasn't something I had any knowledge about. I didn't even know, if it was even possible. But that was a big step for me. A big step is giving up control over myself that allows me to shift into a communication where you're inspired with knowledge that's not first stored in your head. So when we're
Mm,
talking to people in spirit, that's not knowledge that's first stored in my head. We never met these people before. We have no idea who they are, the information connected to them. And that's what I try to share with people at my galleries. You're watching a superior communication that's based on spirit inspiration. And that, and when you learn to surrender control over your life, you shift into that alignment. And like you said, it's a harmony. There's this beautiful harmony you don't want to get out of. It's just gorgeous. There's a unity, there's a synchronicity that happens.
hmm and being in that flow with spirit is such a delicious experience.
Yes,
It's like a vicarious thrill because you're living through someone else's experiences and life, especially the upliftment of love that you can
yes,
feel in those moments. And as you said, these are not our people or situations,
right.
and we're having to get to know them within a
Yes,
couple of minutes,
yes,
fast. And they might not be fast talkers, they may not be good sharers. You're still trying to work and have that conversation with spirit, because some of them are right there, bang on, ready to talk, here you go, on a
yes,
platter. And it just depends on the event. It depends on the energy that spirit brings, the medium brings, the client or recipients bring to that experience. They're all energetically infusing the situation with their own understandings, but I think openings that are occurring during those moments. So maybe this is a good time to talk about, how did you find mediumship?
um, I started out at a low point in my life. I was in my 40s and life wasn't working out for me well. And I was kind of separated from Michelle, my wife, and I was by myself. I was in debt, and I kind of turned to God and said, I was told that you believe that you are real. And I know I've proven to myself I can't do life on my own. This is the proof. I'm at this low point. I'm by myself, away from my daughter. I can't do life on my own. And so for the very first time in my life, I went back in time and I started picking up on all the moments where life just seemed to work out when I was inspired with knowledge, from the police, from the martial arts. So I said, all right, if that's a form of communication, I'm not going to try to do life on my own. I'm going to stop my thinking and see if I can have more moments where I'm inspired with knowledge. And that was my starting point.
Mm. And
And then I committed myself to it.
sometimes it takes a huge shift moment, a moment where you have nowhere to go but up,
Correct. It's
right?
true.
You're like, I'm at a complete low point,
Yes.
and now I'm asking for the hand up finally,
Correct.
and having those moments of, I know there has to be something more than this.
Yes.
And so there was it kind of ignited the fire. A lot of people do learn through struggle, right?
Yes.
They learn through that personal struggle, that turmoil, and having to pull themselves up by the bootstraps in those experiences, and saying, I need to bring a better version of myself to my life right here, right now. And so then, as you were on this experience of the low point and you started reaching to the divine, then what happened?
Um, I started I started having these moments of inspiration, also enlightenment. And one of them was every time I would think, I always felt alone.
Mm,
So I said to myself, okay, if I stop trying to do life on my own, will I stop thinking? And then I started shifting into, again, how do I get connected to more inspiration? So I started off by saying, well, maybe I have to ask for help. So I started actually, but it was a sincere gesture of love on my part. And I think that's key, that there was a sincere gesture of love going, I really need help. And so I went back to what I've learned before in my past and just said, sometimes things resonate with me as true. Things resonate with me as the loving thing to do. Other things don't resonate with me as the loving thing to do. What if that's God's voice? What if that's a communication that everybody universally that exists in all people, which it does, love? And what if that's a guidance that equally applies to all people, trying to point them towards certain people and certain places and certain opportunities and a certain way of speaking and a certain way of responding to situations? What if it's all that? And so for the very first time, I became a student of love and used it as a form of guidance, as if I referred to it as God's voice. And
Mm.
every single day, that's all I listened to. And when I started listening more, I got away from thinking on my own and I started listening more. And then I started being inspired more. And it started to evolve. My mannerisms changed. The way I delivered my words changed. I started shifting into an awareness. So physically, we observe life. The eyes of our spirit is our awareness. We can become aware of things that we physically can't see. I started shifting where I became more aware. And I started slowing my pace in life. I wasn't trying to. Life went at a slower pace. And when I shifted into all of that, I had more moments of being inspired with knowledge that turned out to be true. That started a wisdom. I started learning more about an explanation about how unconditional love works, how it was created to govern everybody's life equally. And so I look at that creation to govern everybody's life equally as something proof that a divine actually exists. And so I kept on following it. And then I started seeing medical imbalances in people. And then I started, about a year and a half later, I started talking to people in spirit. But all the while, I never charged for readings. I was just doing readings for people just to prove it to true.
Mhm.
And it's something I think is was key at the time, is that I wasn't doing it for money. I was doing it just to see if a higher power existed, and is this true, and can I get better at it?
Yes.
That's all I
Well,
was doing.
most student or developing mediums, they don't charge as they're learning, as they're going through those experiences. They're having to go through the testing ground, as it were, of understanding how spirit works with them, building that psychic dictionary, having that understanding of, well, when I feel this, this is what this means. So you're having to learn the language of spirit through that time. So yeah, it makes sense that you wouldn't charge as you're learning and you're growing in those particular years.
And well, what was important, like when you're talking about teachers, a lot of times people do that based on guidelines. You might go to a certain place and goes, "Here's our guidelines." With me, it was an individual thing. And what I was saying is that I'm not using this in a shallow way to further myself financially. I'm using this because I really am doing a sincere gesture of love towards God, going, if it's really true, I'm just going to follow you. I never wanted to do readings for money. I never wanted to do galleries. I never wanted to do spiritual events. I just wanted to reach my life's fullest potential. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be proud of myself at the end of my life. So I just did it, that if there's a unity between us and God, if there's a coexistence, a co-alliance that I wasn't taught properly when I was a kid, I was going to do it on my own, and I don't want anything for it. And I think that's the foundation of unconditional love. When you're making a sincere gesture towards aligning yourself with other people or the divine without wanting anything in return for yourself.
Yes.
And that was my foundation.
And then eventually you got to a point where you recognized that you were going to charge for things, that you were going to offer those services in a professional capacity, and you had to come to peace about that too.
I was guided to do it. I'd
Yeah.
never wanted to do it. And there's a difference between what we mentally want and what we spiritually need. And so I had to learn the difference between what I mentally want for myself and understand how that conversation comes into play, because there's a difference in the two voices, and
Yes.
what I spiritually need. So inspiration, I was inspired to do an event and it all just worked out. And I was like, that's my last one. I'm never doing that again. Because It was a challenge, Willa, to
Oh,
stand in front of like 24 people for the first time
yeah,
and to talk to
energetically.
people in spirit. It was a challenge. But the coolest thing happened is when I was guided to do that, and I never wanted to do it, but I'm showing faith now, it was predestined to work out. And all of a sudden, people started calling me up and they wanted personal readings, or one lady even hired me to do group events. And I said, okay, as soon as this fizzles out, I'm done. And all of a sudden, it didn't fizzle out. It grew and grew and grew. So it was never a choice I made. It was a guidance I followed. And again, I feel that when you're inspired to do something, it's been predestined to work out. All the things I was telling you about, the hunches
Yes.
and the gut feelings from the police, they always seem to work out. What if that's true? What if we follow this all the time and we suffer less?
Yes, beautifully stated, because when we follow that, we do suffer less because we're
Yes.
in that space of true listening and also accepting. And there is that place of grace that transcends karma, that we can feel we are in those moments of extreme gratitude for just that moment. And then for the next, just that moment.
Yes.
And you're living more powerfully in the now. And
100%.
that's how it works with spirit. You have to be completely in the now. And I was going to ask, in terms of your mediumship, do you ever get advanced information, or do you always just receive spontaneously in the moment?
I found that with me, like for instance, prior to an event in the beginning, I would spend like an hour to get prepared. What that means being prepared. And what that meant for me was shifting away from me thinking into a communication that's based on inspiration. So you have to quiet your brain completely to the point where you're back in harmony within yourself. And
Mhm.
that opens up a doorway where you can become aware of people in spirit, and then you'll be inspired with the knowledge that they're sharing with you. So it took me a long time to do that, like an hour. And over time, and this was always key to me, I always wanted to see if I was growing, if I was progressing. And over time, it got less and less and less and less. And then there was moments when I would do the event and I would be running behind schedule. And all of a sudden we would just pop in the door and it started. And so that worked also. So I learned that never minimize this communication. What I should do is pay more attention to me learning. I'm a work in progress and I'm growing. And it can work any way. I can either have to spend an hour to get in that tune, or it can happen just like that, or you can stay in this state 24/7. You can use this as your new way, which is that's what I learned to do. I learned that I don't turn it off and on anymore. I learned how to just be in this state all the time.
Mhm. And I think it's helpful for people who are developing mediums when they hear that, it's okay if you have to do preparatory work. Eventually, what does happen with most professional mediums is that they can prepare more quickly. There's almost like an automatic pilot
Yeah.
of, this is my default setting, ready to go, boom. And spirit and the spirit team is coordinated. They're like, swap, here we go.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And so it takes a lot of the guessing game out of it, because you've practiced so extensively with your spirit team, and energetically you've calibrated yourself to do the higher vibrational work, to do the spirit communication, and then it happens with ease. And so that comes with practice, with right practice and right intention.
Yes.
Those are what I consider two main ingredients for successful mediumship. So
Practice and what else?
right practice and right intention.
Nice.
Yeah. So those are hallmarks of how I teach and how I work. I think it's really important. So in the evolution of working with spirit, which clairs do you feel are more dominant for you?
Again, because I'm self-taught and self-learned, I don't have any background where I say I was taught this way. So everything was about me seeing proof. in my life. And what I learned is that when you shift into a communication that's based on inspiration, is visions happen very often, right? And you have to
Clairvoyance.
interpret the visions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I sense things where I actually feel a part of my body that is pertinent to, say, like a murder, that they're sharing something with me. Sometimes I can actually hear them talking. Sometimes in fact, often I'll see people in spirit standing next to their living loved ones and saying, I'm connected here.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you can see the future, you can see the past. I think it's all the same communication. So I looked at it in such a way where if it's the same communication, then yes, you could be good at one or the other, but all of it's available to you.
Absolutely.
And
Mhm.
so I didn't know, do you feel the same way?
I do feel the same way. It's all available to us. I do feel, I understand that for some people, they're going to have dominant clairs. They're going to be more feelers, or they are more in the knowing sense.
Hmm.
Some people, they're very auditory, and that's how they receive predominantly.
Hmm.
But we do have the opportunity to expand on all of our clairs, and even over time, things can switch as far as what would be considered the dominant for a person as they evolve with spirit, because we go through phases, don't we? We go through phases
Yes.
where almost like we've kind of hit a plateau in our understanding or our knowledge or expression of things, and then there's another climb. Guess what? There's another climb, and there's another experience, another next level that happens within a person. And do you feel, of course, it's probably a yes on this next one, but do you feel that your work as an undercover detective has helped you in terms of being able to accurately and provide the evidence of a person? So your the physical appearance or details about a murder or those kinds of things that would be a little bit more policey.
The answer is yes. In a big way that I saw that it helped me out. So when I first started experimenting with this communication, mediumship, talking to people in spirit, um, I tell the story of I just did free readings for people, and I would do like about like 10 a month, just to improve on this conversation that I was having with people in spirit. I would get like one thing right out of 15 things wrong. And people would leave the readings and go, "Oh, he sucks. I'll never go back to him again." But my viewpoint was different than theirs. I wasn't here trying to impress people. I was here trying to prove and making a sincere gesture of love towards a higher guidance, that I knew that I had to get better at this communication, which allowed me to talk to this higher guidance more proficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I would do it again. And my goal was to get two things right, and then three things right, and then four things right. And after a while, like I'm getting 15 things right out of 15 things. That persistence, I think I learned from being a police officer, because all investigations don't go well. It takes time. That there's something, a crime's been committed. Your job is to find the answer, knowing that there is an answer. And so that's how I think I bought that into mediumship, that persistence, that there's an answer. And if God is real, which God is, I never had an attitude where I minimized my coexistence with that higher power. So I never would say to myself, this is all you can do for me. And so I always looked for answers. So when it came to first time I got a name off of someone, you know, it was just like incredible to me. Like I got a name. That wasn't good enough. I had to get two names. I had to get not only their name, but their child's name, and then somebody else's name. And then as I would get four or five names during a reading, it wasn't good enough. I had to go and pursue harder names, names that aren't common, and go into that. And then it had to be details about, their life that I never got before. So I think it was that, not minimizing that there are answers and we can always get better. And just like the police officer, being persistent.
Yeah, and what you had said before, when you first started, I mean, what someone would call the rookie cop, right?
Yeah, yeah,
As a rookie cop, and
yes,
then you had used that word. You had used that word assertive.
yes,
And what they noticed is that I was assertive, and I
yes,
could bring in, you
yes,
know, X amount of arrests and things like this, and so, again, yes, you're right. That same persistence. But I always think that for people who are able to uh, kind of bring in the evidence, it's about saying, okay, how can I accurately describe this individual in spirit, and also really give their words, give their story
yes,
to that recipient, so that they can really know that they have just talked to their loved ones, and they've
right,
just had this family reunion. And I think that having that background of having to quick identify people and say, this is their eye color, this is what their hair
right,
looks like, their build, boom, 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 boom. I mean, what tell the people who draw the faces
yeah,
until the
yeah,
description comes through, so that you started to become very good at that in your mediumship. I've seen people who were excellent at, in the medical field as nurses and doctors, and then as they go into mediumship, they're like, I can identify that this person died or had such and such before they passed very
yes,
accurately. For you, it would be like, oh, I totally know this was a murder. I
yes,
totally know this was because someone fell off a bridge. You would get that sense
yeah,
because
and
you lived it.
yes, it's the experience that spiritually you had in
Mhm,
a prior profession, and now this is just a new profession that you're bringing that experience into. Yes.
mhm.
You
Do
know,
you?
it's interesting
Go
when we
ahead.
talk about assertiveness.
Yeah.
One of the things when I first started doing this, when I first learning to quiet my thinking, so like I didn't know how to do it. But when I did it, and then I only did it for like 10 seconds and I started thinking again. But the next time I did it for like 15 or 20 seconds, but I saw an improvement. And here's what I said to myself, Willow, what part of me had the power to quiet my thinking for a longer period of time? And that's when I started looking at, well, that was the will of my spirit. That's my spiritual strength. Because I'm now shifting towards a sincere gesture of love, which is to be more aware and to get an education about our coexistence and the communication with a higher power, I started being more assertive. I said, that's a spiritual strength. And then I started going, well, what about faith? That's kind of a spiritual faith. That's a strength too, when I show faith in something over others. And then I realized there was a passion, but there was also courage. And these are all strengths within our spirit, not our thinking. And it helped me understand, like, I'm seeing evidence of my spirit when I show courage to do the right thing or to speak the truth during a moment of adversity. And that's important for people to know that we have these moments and to start to understand that's your spirit going, we're aligned with love and also self-love. And I'm giving you the strength. I created a strength inside of you, this assertiveness and faith and courage and passion to persevere. And that was helpful for me, getting an education about the differences in our own human creation.
Oh, beautifully stated. I think that will inspire many people, and they may even want to play back some of those words, or come to your workshops this summer.
Yes, yes, yes,
And or, but that sense that when in that deepest place of yourself that you are experiencing your divine spark,
yes,
there's a different element of depth and wisdom that comes in that time,
yes,
that feels different from the regular day in, day out reality, the mundane existence. And I do feel what happens is we start to embody prayer. We start to feel the embodiment of that prayerful existence in our life, because we've calibrated to that level. And we can then see it in the quieting, as you were experiencing the quieting, and we can see it in the action then too.
yes. It's beautiful once you understand it. Once you start to self-realize, you come to a self-realization that this is really your spirit. I think that's what people gives people hope. Like, oh my God, this is really evidence of all this.
Yes, and nobody can convert another person about this. They
Yeah,
have to come to it in their own time. It's the difference between someone telling them the story and them living the story. It's a huge, huge difference. And that you can tell people your story and they might, if they've never had anything like that happen to them, they go, okay, sounds nice, whatever. If somebody, if the now you had spoken to the you 25, 30 years ago, and that one from long ago would have been like, yeah, right.
correct.
So
Correct.
if we have to be as gentle with the old us as we are with all the rest of the people that we meet up with that we think should be at a certain level, right? Of
Oh,
understanding.
I agree with you. I think there's certain people that we have a respect for. And so once that happens, like say I just have this respect for you, which I do. So I have a respect for you. Now when you speak, I listen. But if I don't first have a respect for you, if your words haven't been enlightening to me in the past, then no matter what you say to me, I'm not listening. It's just blah, 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 blah. So it changed me, just that, what we just talked about, it changed me saying, I'm going to focus on just developing me. I'm going to focus on polishing up my words, the way I deliver my words, so that they're enlightening, they're educational, they're full of wisdom. And when someone recognizes that, those are the people I'm meant to help. Never tried to help someone who doesn't recognize it first. Because
Amen.
most of the time, if you don't have their respect, if you don't have their attention, if they haven't seen something enlightening about your voice, very often they're not speaking to you anyway. I see it in just families too.
Mm-hmm.
Own parents and children. And I can't tell you how many mentoring, like I do mentoring for kids, and the parents going, they just don't listen to me, Rich, but they want to listen to you. And it's not because I'm better. It's just because I've polished my words up. And I think it's also important to speak about things that are universally truthful to all people, like love. That is universally truthful to all people. It affects everybody's life equally. Let's explain that to one another. Let's learn how that communication works. And we all have that in common and start from there.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect. That understanding of love comes first as a thought that converts into the deed.
Yes.
And I feel that when people recognize they're on a spiritual path, they start to monitor that more. They start to become in that aware that they need to have self-discipline, and that will eventually lead to self-mastery.
Yes.
And once we have that, then it's not about mastering others. It's just we can then perhaps be an inspiration for someone else to go upon their own path of self-discipline and self-awareness to achieve that self-mastery themselves.
That can I compliment you? That was key what you no, that was so key what you said. A change I made to my life years ago that I continue on to this day. At the end of my day, I look back at every choice I made, even it, even if I only take like a minute. I look back at all my choices and the outcomes they produced, and I ask myself this one question: was I proud of myself? That was it. Not was Willa proud of me, or was Michelle proud of me, or was my daughter proud of me? Was I proud of the choice I made and the outcome that it produced? And if not, I change myself and I just do it for me. And what helped me is it helped me showing value in my own voice, in my own way of seeing my own life. And it got me away from looking and trying to change other people and using my voice to do that and refocusing my personal attention on where it should be. That was helpful to me.
Yeah, I think that that'll be helpful for many people when they're evaluating that for themselves. I will say, as a medium, and as you as another medium, you understand what I'm about to say here. You're going to have to do it at the end of your life anyway, when you go through life review.
Yes,
You
I
might
share
as
that.
well go through and do it now. It's less clutter later.
And we can change ourselves now. Once we cross over and we see our life review, we're going to go, man, I messed that one up. You can't go back and change it. Now you can.
That's right.
Just
You
be
can
proud.
change
Just
it.
be proud of oneself. That's all you have to do. Just be proud of yourself.
Yes. And from that place of being proud, not in a false sense of pride, but in being proud, but still almost like a humbleness, right?
Yes.
There's a humbleness that's part of this pride that Rich and I are talking about right now. That once you're in that space, that's what you're going to see and build, and you're going to be able to pivot in your life and turn your face to the sun, to the divine, in more beautiful ways, in ways that are may seem like effort at first, but then with practice, they'll be like, oh, I know how to do this.
Yes.
I know. I remember how to do this.
Yes.
And there's a beauty that evolves. Oh my goodness. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. Any last thoughts that you're wanting to share with folks today?
No, I mean, not really. I'm grateful. I'm grateful of you. I'm grateful of the opportunity. I'm grateful of the conversation. And if our words resonate with people and it enlightens them in some way, blessed. I feel blessed. So thank you for asking me to be on your podcast. It was just a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you for being here today, Rich, and sharing how you personally uncovered the world of spirit and how that evolved. Because your story is something I think will resonate with other people. So many folks don't necessarily have a spiritualist church or center nearby, and
Right.
they're trying to develop. And I do feel that there are some people that are able to develop on their own. Some people, they're in need of classes and of a group that they're like, hey, I felt this. Did you feel that too? Is that how things happen? Like being able to talk to people in those ways is so helpful, which is one of the reasons Lilydale is here for folks, and they can have those experiences within workshops and in classes and learn so that they can recognize how spirit works within them. And everybody has their unique experience with spirit. And as you all are uncovering the world of spirit, you're going to have even more resonance with that which is truth, that
Yes.
which is the divine. So thank you for inspiring us today, Rich. And I would just wanted to reiterate so people know how to find you. Your website is expandingthepresence.com, correct?
It is.
So that's how you can find Rich. If you again, he's not doing private readings, but from time to time he does gallery sessions in person. So people can find out more about that or other events and workshops. And you'll be coming there here this summer to Lilydale. And as I said, I'll post the ticket link so that you all can find that. So you can go ahead and get registered and be here at the end of August and the last day of the season, September 1st. So
The grand
can't
finale.
wait. Yes, it'll be wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you maybe next week. I think this might be my last show for the summer season. I'll go on hiatus until the autumn because this is such a busy time of year for me. But all right, everyone, have a wonderful day and God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.